The first thing their scanners noticed was the silence. Not the absence of noise, space was always quiet, but the absence of expected patterns. No stellar interference, no debris signatures, no electromagnetic residue from recent traffic. The sector ahead looked wrong, like a painting where the artist had forgotten to add shadows. The Kalori exploration flotilla slowed as one, their sleek vessels drifting into a cautious formation. They were explorers by doctrine, scientists by culture, and survivors by necessity. For 3 centuries, they had mapped the spiral arms, catalogued pre-warp civilizations, and documented the ruins of empires that had burned themselves out before anyone else arrived. Their scanners had never screamed before. At first, it was subtle, a tremor in the data stream, a ripple where clean numbers should have been. Then the alerts cascaded, one system triggering another, translating confusion into alarms that echoed through command decks like panicked heartbeats. Mass readings contradicted themselves. Energy profiles appeared and vanished between scans. Gravitational vectors curved without cause. The instruments did not merely fail. They argued. The flotilla's commanders ordered a diagnostic sweep, assuming a software fault or an unknown cosmic phenomenon. The AI cores complied, and then requested permission to isolate themselves. That request alone froze the bridges. Kalori artificial intelligences did not request isolation unless they were encountering paradoxes severe enough to threaten cognitive collapse. Their logic trees were elegant, ancient, and stable. They had guided fleets through supernova shockwaves and navigated the ruins of spacetime left behind by extinct gods. Now they were afraid. Before any decision could be made, the void ahead of the flotilla folded. Not opened, not tore. Folded. Space bent inward like fabric pinched between invisible fingers, and from that distortion emerged shapes that defied the Kalori understanding of design. The ships were enormous but not symmetrical, powerful but not graceful. Their hulls were layered in overlapping armor plates, scorched and scarred, each one telling a story of survival rather than perfection. Human warships had arrived. The scanners screamed. Threat algorithms spiked into the red and kept climbing, unable to settle on a single estimate. Weapons analysis flagged redundancies upon redundancies, each system. Backed by another and another after that. Heat signatures suggested engines pushed far beyond optimal efficiency, restrained only by structural tolerances that had clearly been exceeded before and repaired anyway. These ships were not built to be beautiful. They were built to endure. The Kalori flotilla attempted a standard first contact protocol. Peaceful signals, mathematical constants, cultural identifiers broadcast on open frequencies. The transmissions were received instantly. There was no reply. Instead, the human ships adjusted formation. Not aggressively, precisely. Their movement was subtle, almost casual, but every shift closed firing lanes, protected vulnerable vectors, and positioned hulls between the Kalori vessels and potential unknowns. It was the posture of beings who assumed danger was inevitable and preparation was simply courtesy. Kalori scanners tried again to understand what they were seeing. The problem was not that the human ships were more advanced. The problem was that they were unpredictable. Their power curves did not match any known technological progression. Their weapon signatures spanned centuries of development, as if old systems had never been fully retired, only reinforced and repurposed. Kinetic cannons sat beside energy lances. Missiles shared space with gravity-based weapons that bent trajectories in ways physics textbooks insisted were inefficient. Inefficient, perhaps. Effective, undeniably. A Kalori science vessel attempted a closer scan, extending its sensor arrays to maximum resolution. The moment the beam touched a human hull, feedback surged back through the system, overwhelming filters and forcing an emergency shutdown. The data it captured in that fraction of a second was enough. The hull was not just armor. It was memory. Layered composites recorded stress fractures and micro-repairs, each one catalogued and reinforced. The ship had learned where it broke and refused to break there again. Materials were embedded with adaptive lattices that redistributed force based on past impacts. These ships remembered pain. Across the flotilla, a quiet realization spread. They were not encountering a civilization new to war. They were encountering a civilization shaped by it. The first human transmission arrived without fanfare. It was simple, clear, calm. A navigational acknowledgement, confirmation of presence, a polite request for identification and intent. No threat. No display of power. Just confidence. The Kalori responded immediately, explaining their mission, their peaceful purpose, their surprise at encountering human military vessels so far beyond previously charted borders. Their diplomats chose every word carefully, aware that misunderstanding at this scale could end civilizations. The human reply came moments later. Acknowledged. You have entered a secured transit corridor. Remain on current vectors. No hostile intent detected. The scanners continued screaming anyway. Because beneath the polite surface of the transmission was something the Kalori could not ignore. Every human ship was running combat simulations. Millions of them. In parallel, scenarios branched and recombined, testing outcomes not just of battle but of failure, of betrayal, of sudden irrational behavior. The human systems did not assume peace would last. They prepared for its collapse. As the two fleets drifted together, the Kalori began to see more details. Human crews moved through their ships with unhurried purpose. Damage control teams stood ready at stations that showed no current damage. Medical bays were staffed beyond peacetime requirements. This was normal for them. One Kalori officer, old enough to remember the War of Shattered Orbits, felt something tighten in his chest. He had seen this posture before, long ago, in the final days of an empire that knew it was surrounded by enemies. But humanity was not surrounded. Humanity was waiting. The flotilla's lead vessel received clearance to approach closer. As it did, the Kalori sensors finally stabilized enough to read the markings etched into the human hulls. Names, symbols, insignia that carried no meaning yet somehow conveyed weight. Some ships bore emblems of unity, others carried marks of loss. One hull passing slowly across the Kalori viewport carried a simple line etched into scarred metal. Still here. The Kalori understood then why their scanners had screamed. Human warships existed in a constant state of readiness, not because they expected war, but because they remembered what happened when they were not ready. Their historical archives began updating automatically, cross-referencing newly received human data with fragments of ancient records previously dismissed as myth, battles where unknown fleets intervened briefly, decisively, and vanished, conflicts. That ended abruptly when an external force imposed consequences no one else could. Humanity had been there, not as conquerors, as an answer. The Kalori asked carefully why such heavily armed vessels guarded what appeared to be an empty corridor of space. The human response was delayed this time. When it came, it carried weights. This corridor leads to inhabited systems. Some of them are young. Some of them cannot defend themselves yet. The implications settled over the flotilla like gravity. The Kalori had believed themselves explorers on the edge of the unknown. They realized now they were guests in a domain protected by a species that had decided long ago what lines would not be crossed. As the flotilla prepared to alter course, a final burst of sensor data slipped through, unintended, unfiltered. A glimpse of what the human warships were truly capable of when they stopped being polite. Weapon systems that rewrote local constants. Engines that punched through folded dimensions by force. Failsafes designed to ensure mutual destruction rather than surrender. The data was gone almost instantly. But the message remained. First contact ended without incident. No shots fired. No threats exchanged. And yet, as the Kalori flotilla withdrew, their crews knew something fundamental had changed. They had met the humans. And their scanners had screamed not because of what the warships were doing, but because of what they were holding back. In the endless dark between stars, the galaxy quietly adjusted its understanding of fear. And humanity continued its watch, patient and unyielding, guardians of a peace they were fully prepared to shatter if forced. Somewhere far beyond the reach of friendly scanners, old enemies felt a chill they could not explain. Because the humans had been seen. And once seen, they could not be forgotten.